For today's review, we are looking at the Superman vs. Atomic Skull 2-pack. And before I talk about the accessories and the figures, let's take a quick look at the data profile cards that are included. And as you can see, there are two of them, one for Superman and one for Atomic Skull. And they both feature comic book artwork for the photos. On the backside, you do have the usual read-up for both of the characters, and I'm only going to be reading the one for Atomic Skull since we already know Superman's origin. His real name is Joseph Martin, and it reads, while on an experimental Starlab submarine, scientist Joseph Martin was exposed to nuclear energy. Shipwrecked on a desert island, he survived by releasing deadly nuclear blasts from his mouth. His skin and muscles literally peeled off his face, inspiring him to create supervillain for hire persona, Atomic Skull. He regularly clashed with Superman both alone and with criminals such as Major Disaster and the Royal Flush Gang. In recent times, Martin reformed, fighting criminals with the Metropolis Special Crimes Unit, Superwoman, and the Teen Titans. And that's a pretty good read-up on who Atomic Skull is as a character. And now, let's talk about the accessories that are included with both of these figures. Let's start with Superman. Since this Superman figure is a reissue of the Action Comics 1000 version, just repainted in this brighter, vibrant color, well, when it comes to his accessories, unfortunately, it is the same two sets of hands. That's all you get for this Superman figure. You do not get any other accessories for him. So, there are those two hands again. As for Atomic Skull, he also comes with two interchangeable hands. So right now on the figure, as you can see, he does have his effect hands, as I like to call them, because they are using his powers, right? They're sculpted with his abilities. Well, if you don't want those equipped and you want his normal hands, you do have that option as well. So you have an open gesture hand and a fist hand. And the sculpting of these hands are pretty cool when it comes to the details, because they do match the overall design of the figure. And that is pretty much all the accessories you get for each figure. Just two interchangeable hands. Not a whole lot here. This is literally the bare minimum of accessories. And this confuses me because this is the second reissue of this Superman figure from what I can remember, because the first reissue of this Action Comics 1000 Superman figure was, of course, the Devastator 2-pack that gave us this angry head sculpt, right? Why couldn't they have just taken this head sculpt and also tossed it in with this 2-pack set so then you can have Superman with both head portraits? I don't understand why they couldn't have done that. I mean, it's not that hard for them to do, but of course, you know, Mcfarlane being Mcfarlane, nothing makes sense sometimes. So for people who missed out, of course, on the original one, and even this 2-pack, well, even if you get this one, you don't get this other head sculpt option, which is quite unfortunate. Now, of course, since this is a 2-pack, there is a base that is included for both of the figures to stand on. Well, I wouldn't say stand on. It's more of like an action base where you're going to get them into some sort of action pose. And of course, it is this flaming fire base, which is a reuse of a flaming fire base that we've gotten once before, which was introduced in the White Knight Batman vs. Azrael 2-pack. So this is the same exact base from that set, just repainted in this purple color, which, in my opinion, if you're going to reuse a base, this works because this will go well with Atomic Skull since his powers are pretty much purple fire, I guess, from what I can tell from the photo. And as you can see, there is a peg right here for a feet to be, slotted into. And the overall use of this base is not the best in execution, in my opinion, because the plastic is really flimsy and hollow, and, you know, the figures themselves do have a little bit of weight to them. You're not really going to get them into, like, a really cool pose on here. If you're going to use this as more like a sort of flame effect, sort of like prop for, say that he's standing there and there's like fire on the ground, this is going to work for that. And also, this comes apart, as you can see. You can take these off and separate them, which is the cool thing. Now, I can't take this other one off because it's like really tight. It's like stuck in there, and I don't want to break anything because usually translucent plastic parts like this, they feel very flimsy and cheap. if they're not made with the best material. So, be careful when you disassemble this into 3 parts. And that is the base that is included. And of course, the last 2 things that you get in this box are, of course, the DC figure stands for both of these figures to stand on if you want to use those. And that is pretty much all you get in this set. And one thing to clarify here, this was a Amazon Gold Label set at one point of time, and I don't know if it's still available anymore because it's been quite some time since I picked up this set. So if it is still available, well, this is one that is probably worth picking up because I think Atomic Skull here is a really cool figure. And now that we're talking about this, let's move on to the aesthetics, and of course, let's start with Superman, which is the simpler one. Since this Superman figure is pretty much a reissue, there's not a whole lot of new stuff going on here. The entire body buck is the same. The only new thing that is on here is just the colors. So again, as I said, it is painted in this bright, vibrant color, which I love the color of this repaint. I wasn't really a fan of the original version with that darker blue. At first, back then, I was okay with it when I saw it, but then something wasn't really vibing with me for some reason, so I never bought the original version for some reason. I know most people did because it was the best Superman for a long time. For like, in terms of like a classic looking Superman figure, that was the best from Mcfarlane Toys. But when this 2-pack was announced and they showed this Superman figure, that was where, like, whoa, this brighter color actually looks better than that sort of darker blue. Even though the S emblem, which was painted in this metallic color, as you can see right here, is cool, I really like what they did with this one. I know it doesn't have that metallic color for the S emblem, but just the brighter yellow, the brighter reds, and the brighter blues just makes this Superman figure look better than it was originally, because you have to remember, Superman is a character that represents hope, right? The colors being brighter kind of comes off as that symbol of hope, while this sort of darker color that we saw previously wasn't really the colors that worked for, well, I mean, it depends on which iteration of the costume that you like, but for example, this is meant to be like despair, right? So, I don't know. For me, I've always preferred that brighter color for Superman when it comes to his costume. I just never really liked the darker blue color. It just never really vibed with me. So, yeah, this is why I end up picking up this 2-pack to finally get a Action Comics 1000 Superman with this head sculpt, of course. And I believe this head sculpt is, of course, the same one that we saw with that original version. And even the skin tone for this one is different. Like, it's brighter, it's more vibrant. They added some flush to his face, or blemishes, whatever you want to call it, to give him that look. And I don't know if the camera is going to do any service here, showing what that looks like, because my camera quality is not the greatest. But yeah, in person, the skin tone color for this Superman is really good. Like, I like the way it came out. And of course, the cape on the back is, of course, the same cape. Sadly, there is no S emblem logo that is painted on the back here, which is unfortunate. But yeah, that is pretty much all the aesthetics for this Superman, because there's not a whole lot with this figure that is new. Everything is just the same, right? So there is Superman. And now, moving on to Atomic Skull, who is pretty much the main character of this 2-pack, because he is the one that most people would bought this 2-pack for. Actually, no, most people bought this 2-pack for this, but this is like a bonus, and I think this is a really good bonus. And I really like this figure the most because this is a really cool supervillain, and he doesn't really get a lot of screen time. I don't think I've ever seen him much in animations. I feel like he's like a very rare character to see these days in animations. I don't know, I could be wrong, but I like the design of this version of Atomic Skull that we got in figure form here. It's really cool. I like the purples and everything. And as I said in a previous video when I talked about the Lex Luthor figures, he does reuse parts from Lex Luthor, such as the thighs here, right? Like, these are the same designs. The upper parts of his arms, the stomach area, these are reused parts. But he also has some new parts that are sculpted to him that have been retooled that are quite different. So let's start with the head sculpt being the first one that's the most obvious here. His head sculpt is probably the coolest thing that I've ever seen on an action figure. And just like what I said with the Black Lantern Deathstorm figure that I did a review on a long time ago, this head sculpt looks like it could be used for a Ghost Rider custom. If you wanted to make a 7-inch scale Ghost Rider figure, this head sculpt right here is the best option for that custom right there. This flaming skull face, everything about it is just cool. And the translucent sort of color here for the flame effects, it works. And I like this head sculpt a lot. As for his torso, this is all retooled. The entire top part of his torso is not the same as the Lex Luthor torso. This front part has a different sculpt to it. Even the shoulder armors here, the collar, everything is new. So this is different. This kind of looks like an arc reactor to me for some reason. I mean, well, maybe it is one. No, of course not. And for the backside of this armor, it doesn't have any coverings. This is where it's kind of interesting. So the front part here is where it pretty much covers just the front. The backside is the same as the Luthor figure from the backside. Everything here is the same. Nothing has been retooled. So that's interesting how it doesn't wrap around the entire back portion of the figure. Now for its waist area, they also retooled this entire part as well, which is quite interesting. And as you can see, the front here, you don't have those same little circular disc designs that were on the top part here. This is like a brand new sculpt, just layered over an existing part of the sculpt that existed. The side here, I don't know if this was in the original one. Actually, why am I saying that? I can just grab the figure right now. Okay, no, it was not on that one. No, it was not. Okay, that is new. So this is a new part, and then on the back here, this is all new as well for the back of the armor for his waist area. So yeah, that is a new sculpt. And then for his arms, as you can see, these are also new. I think, yeah, these gauntlets are definitely different. I like the overall sculpt of the armor gauntlets here, which is really cool. So there's that. And of course, since we're talking about the figure, we might as well talk about the hands before we move on to the legs. As you can see, these effect hands are freaking sick. Look at this hand. It looks like he's about to grab somebody with these flaming hands. And then for this one, he's like blasting fire out of his hands, which is really cool. So I like that they're sculpted with these details. Now, do the translucent colors work for them? I suppose they do. I like the way that they came out. But of course, if you are a customizer, you could probably make them look even better than this, right? So there are the hands. And down here by the legs, we do have a little bit of a retool as well. So this lower half of the leg, these are all new parts here for the armor pieces. You have these little circle designs. So in terms of retooling, when it comes to this particular figure, they did a lot of work here. Even though they reuse parts, this is one of those figures where reusing the parts and also retooling certain parts of it to make it look different actually works. Okay, that is pretty much all the aesthetics for this figure. There's not a whole lot else to talk about since a lot of the details on there are of course the same details we've seen before, just these other parts that are new that we have just covered right now. So let's move on to, of course, the articulation for both of these figures. So let's start with Superman here. If you want him to get into a flying pose, he can look up, which is not too bad. He can look down, which is okay. He can turn his head side to side, tilt his head side to side, no problem. So the head sculpt articulation is good. As for his arms, he can lift them out this high. He can swing them upward this high up, swing back. It will run into the cape. For his bicep here, it does swivel. For his arms, he does have single jointed arms because this is an older figure. So this was, a long time ago, they had single jointed for some of their figures. And it does have like a little bit of a ratchet system for his arm, as you can see right there. So there is that. He does have the articulation in the wrists and of course the swivel here with the hands. So there is that. For his torso, he does have rotation, which is okay. Leaning forward, not really the greatest. Leaning backwards, it's okay. For his waist, it does move. Does it lean forward? Not the best. Does it lean back? Oh, it does lean back, but it does leave this large gap right there, so that's not pretty. For his legs, he can do the splits. Kicking out, that's as far as you're going to get him to kick out. Double jointed for the legs, they do work. And for his feet, there is feet articulation, swivel, and toe articulation. And for the upper thigh cuts, or not thigh cuts, I mean thigh swivels, fumbling with the terms here, they do not move. They are frozen stiff. That is unfortunate. And that is going to do for all the articulation for Superman. Let me just put him right there. Moving on into the articulation for Atomic Skull, let's start with his head sculpt. As you can see, he can look up a little bit, not the greatest, because the back part of his head does run into the collar part of his shoulder armor, so that will hinder articulation when it comes to looking up. Looking down, not an issue. Turning his head left and right, that's pretty good. Tilting his head side to side, that's also pretty good as well. So when it comes to the articulation for his head sculpt, it's okay, but when it comes to looking up, not the greatest. For his arms, he can spread out that high up, but it does run into the shoulder armor here, as you can see. Swinging his arms outward, it will run into the shoulder armor as well. Going back, same problem. So you can't do the whole 360 swing back and forth sort of deal. For his bicep swivel, that does move. He does have double jointed in his arms, which they seem to be really tight. Oh, there we go. It does work. He does have swivel in his hands and, of course, wrist articulation. Does that want to work? No, it does not want to work. It's actually, no, it does work. Here we go. Yeah, it works this way. So he does have that as well. For his torso, there is no rotation up here. I do not know what's going on with this figure for some reason. Is it like a QC problem on mine? I'm not too sure why it doesn't move. It does not swivel for some reason. This is like the first time I've ever seen a figure have this problem with the upper torso. It might be a quality control issue on my copy. As for his waist, it is very loose for some reason. Like, look at this. It's like that bad. So this might be a quality control issue. So yeah, there's that. Leaning forward, it's not going to do any of that. For his legs, he can do the splits. And then for kicking outward, he can kick up pretty high up because this is a softer piece. So there's that. And he does have double jointed in the legs if they want to work. As you can see, they do. He does have articulation in the feet, swivel, and toe articulation. And of course, last but not least, as I try to fix the legs, does he have thigh swivel? Yes, he does. It works. And that is pretty much all the articulation on Atomic Skull. Now it's time for some comparisons, and let's bring in some figures to compare them to. So, of course, let's start with this angry Superman that we got from the Devastator 2-pack. Hopefully he stands. Okay, he does. And as you can see, the colors are quite different between these two figures, right? You have a darker blue and a brighter blue. You have darker reds. Even the skin tones aren't the same, right? This one represents hope. This one represents despair. That's kind of how I separate them. And I do kind of like that. It does fit that sort of vibe to me, right? So there is that comparison. Here he is next to the new 52 Eradicator. And as you can see, the height between these two characters actually fit nicely. So there is a scale right there that works for this Eradicator. Here he is next to Steel. And as you can see, Steel is taller than Superman. I think he's about the same height as Atomic Skull, so not too bad. But scale is probably one of the worst things in the DC Multiverse line for Mcfarlane toys, because there are certain characters that don't scale right with other characters for some reason in this line, and it's been a running issue for quite a long time now. So in this case, is Steel taller than Superman? I'm not too sure. Maybe he is. Maybe he's not. So there is that comparison. And who shall we bring in next? Oh, of course. Here he is next to the New 52 Cyborg Superman. These two work together on the shelf. They look like they can be from the same source material. And also, if you don't want him in the picture and you just want these two, that's a pretty good team up right there as well. So I do like that. Okay, now let's move on to another comparison. Let me just put the Superman back on the table. Don't fall. All right. Here he is next to Luthor. Of course, we must have him next to his arch nemesis. And I would like to say this is also a good pairing right here, because these bright colors really do clash with the green and the purple on the shelf. So if you're using this particular Superman for your whole like Superman versus Lex Luthor, this is like the best combo here. So I really like how this came out, right? So there is that comparison. And finally, the last comparison for today's review. Here he is next to, of course, the Silver Age Superman, who is now technically the new Superman that's taken over for that classic-looking Superman. And I'll leave it to you to decide, which one would you keep on your shelf as your favorite classic-looking Superman? Because I know some people still prefer this one, even though this new one is definitely an improvement. But I think both of them are good in their own respects. I mean, the only thing I can say that's better is, of course, the articulation for this one is definitely upgraded from this version, right? But when it comes to the sculpt and the colors and everything, I like both of them. And there it is. That is the final comparison. And I did not mean to do that, but you know what? I'm going to keep this in the video for fun, because sometimes accidents like this do happen. So there it is. All the comparisons for today's review. If you found today's review of the Superman vs. Atomic Skull 2-pack informative, do give this video a like. If you want to subscribe to the channel for more action figure content and whatever else I do on here, it would be much appreciated. And with that said, take care, and I will see you in the next video.